Welcome everyone to this webinar today. This is our first Atelier webinar on the topic of Innovation Ateliers. Please stay with us, don't click away if you're not familiar with the terminology of Innovation Ateliers. I think we have prepared for you today a most interesting program where we will do our best to explain the Innovation Atelier concept. And get some feeling with the experience we have in the context of Atelier project. Before we will present to you the program of today's webinar and also present the lectures of today, I would like to introduce myself a little bit here. Jeroen Brouwer is my name. I'm currently employed at TNO. It's in the Netherlands, the largest privatized research organization. I will be your moderator today, and I think it's interesting to say that I consider myself one of the founding fathers of the Atelier project, as I have been involved in the Atelier project as early as the beginning of the preparation of the project proposal, which dates back the early of the year 2018. My role in the project is a bit more on the project management and coordination, but I also I'm quite involved in the development of the innovation ateliers in cities myself. So let's have a look at the program for today. We will kickstart with a bit of an introduction on the Atelier project, so a little bit of the context. We introduce the concept of positive energy districts, and present also the Positive Energy District Learning Platform, which we are currently hosting as a way to disseminate the results and lessons learned of the project to many. After that, we will present you the speakers. I will introduce them to you a little bit more in detail. Then we have two inspiring lectures by Geiske and Juanita. After that, we will have a Q&A session. We have time reserved for that. Important to mention here to formulate your questions in the chat function that is available within Teams. By doing so, we will get these questions, and we will make sure to put them into the discussion and see how we can answer these questions as best as possible. So here are some of the housekeeping rules as well. Once again, the Q&A session. After that, we will wrap up this webinar for today, and say a few more words on following webinars that are in the planning for the coming months. And hopefully we will be able to close here around 1:30 at latest. So a very brief introduction on the Atelier project. Atelier project is a so-called Horizon 2020 research project, innovation project. It's funded by the European Commission. It's a SCC project, so-called Smart City and Community Project, which has an intended duration of 60 months. We have started somewhere in the back of 2018 or 2019. We were foreseen to end by the end of this year, but due to certain circumstances, we intend to take it a little bit longer. The main objective and aim of the Atelier project basically is to demonstrate, create, and also replicate the so-called positive energy districts in cities. To learn from that and to bring this also wider to other cities in Europe, in their ambition also to become climate neutral, and in their energy transition strategies. A little bit more in detail. We have 8 cities in total in the consortium of Atelier. It's steadily founded on 2 lighthouse cities, Amsterdam and Bilbao. You will find also on this map. In Amsterdam and Bilbao, we actually have selected urban districts that we are currently transforming in positive energy districts, where we are applying innovations and technologies, new construction, new installations for installing renewable energy sources, for energy storage, energy savings. And also, these measures are all implemented and tested in the context of the Atelier project. In yellow, you will find the so-called fellow cities. These are cities that are really eager and participating in the Atelier project to learn from the experience of the lighthouse cities. And in their turn, the fellow cities are working on their own positive energy district plans and to replicate the successes and good experience in their city context. It is a combined effort. Atelier consortium exists of 30 partners, ranging from city authorities, universities, research organizations, but also technology and software providers. Those 30 partners are representing 9 European member states, as well as Switzerland. So having said so, I think it's a good time to start a short introduction on the concept of positive energy districts. And for that, we will show you a short movie.
Have you ever heard of positive energy districts and asked yourself what it's about? The European Union aims to be climate neutral by 2050, an economy with net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Ambitious goal, isn't it? But how can we achieve this? Smart cities have an essential role in this transition. Smart cities are using technological solutions and social innovations to improve the urban environment and contribute to the climate goals. We have to rethink and replan the way we use and generate energy in our living environment. Improving energy efficiency by retrofitting and by building new efficient buildings, as well as by integrating more renewable energy production in the built environment, are key solutions. Positive energy districts can speed up the implementation of these. If we only create separate, near-zero energy buildings in cities and we don't connect them, we miss many opportunities for technical and economic optimization through collective energy production and storage. Positive energy districts are energy efficient and energy flexible urban areas or groups of connected buildings. They produce net zero greenhouse gas emissions and actively manage an annual local or regional surplus production of renewable energy. The flexibility in the energy system allows the matching of local renewable energy production with energy demand through local energy storage. Photovoltaics produces electricity during the day, and electric vehicles need power to charge in the evening. Positive Energy District is a complex innovation with many aspects, from urban planning to energy system innovations and ICT applications, from citizen engagement to new business model and legal framework and governance. The success of implementing positive energy districts will depend on the integration of technical solutions and social, political, and business innovations. To develop positive energy districts, technical solutions can help people living and working in the positive energy district use less energy, or use energy in a more flexible way during the day. More and more energy communities are discussing and organising their shared energy use, sharing the energy grid and trading energy. Together, we learn more and more about the development of positive energy districts in different cities, sharing experiences and knowledge on a daily basis. Would you like to know more about positive energy districts? Follow our e-learning module explaining all the different aspects.
Thank you. I think this has been an inspiring movie to have some of a context of the positive energy districts that we are also developing in the lighthouse cities, and that we are trying to implement also in the fellow cities. I think important to say that you will be able to access this movie and also the positive energy district learning platform at a later stage again if you're interested. I think it is now time to shortly introduce to you the two inspiring lectures that we have today. Would like to start to say Gijske Bouma. She's also working at TNO Vector in the Netherlands on the topic of urban innovation. Gijske is a trained urban planner by education, and she's involved in the Atelier project to support the establishment of innovation ateliers in cities. She's doing this besides the Atelier project also in other European projects, so she probably might also mention this in her lecture. And she will cover in her presentation the concept of innovation ateliers, how it functions, and what is the added value for cities. Juanita will afterwards present to us the main lessons and results of the Innovation Atelier so far. Juanita, with an expertise in urban living labs, designing and development, is working at the AMS Research Institute in Amsterdam. And she's mainly responsible in the context of Atelier project on the evaluation and monitoring of innovation ateliers in cities. The focus of her presentation will predominantly be on the outcomes and lessons learned of the innovation atelier so far. So hope that you will enjoy these lectures, and will keep tuned in till afterwards, and also participate in our Q&A, where we hopefully can reply to all of your questions. So without no further delay, I would like to welcome the first speaker of today, Gijske Bouma.
Thank you, Jeroen. And also a good afternoon from my side. Happy to be here. And I will be diving a bit more into our concept of the Innovation Ateliers, how it works, and how we've been also developing that in the two lighthouse cities of Amsterdam and Bilbao. First of all, I think the movie already showed some of the context, but just to reiterate that a bit, we see a global transition towards fossil-free energy system. And well, this comes very much together in our urban settings. And where we talk about urban transformation in the built environment, looking for more climate adaptive and climate neutral cities, well, positive energy districts can be of importance and really add to that ambition. So that's why I think we put attention to it, but not only as a one-off for the project, but something that sustains beyond the lifetime of the project. And I would say that's the core also about what the Innovation Ateliers are aiming for. Before I dive into the concept, I think it's nice to say that when we were developing the proposal, we see that there are lots of innovations required to reach our goals and our aims to become climate neutral in future. It's about technologies, it's about connections, policies, regulations, financial arrangements, connecting it to all these different stakeholders, making sure sources are available, accessible, accountable, but there's more to that. Of course, it's a system innovation, and we need to make sure we connect the dots as the picture is trying to show, but it's more than that. And within the project, there's a lot of emphasis on collaboration and learning, because we see that the innovations applied are new. They require an open collaboration where different stakeholders can learn, where they can gain experience, where they can share. So within the project and also within the concept of the Innovation Atelier, there's a lot of attention to fostering the process of collaboration, learning, sharing, co-creation and co-evolution. And it's part of the foundation also of the concept of the Innovation Atelier. Starting from that, what's the main objective? The main objective of setting up such an innovation atelier is to really mobilize the whole ecosystem around this positive energy district development, connecting it to innovation capacity, stimulating the co-creation, feeding in knowledge, making sure we learn, and also making sure that that then leads to a successful realization of PEDs, and that we can also pay attention to the upscaling and the replication. And if you look at the Atelier project in itself, we see that we've had a focus from the start, of course, on establishing the innovation ateliers in the lighthouse cities of Amsterdam and Bilbao. And once we started, there was a lot of connection made to knowledge that fed in to these ateliers, and that we have a structure of innovation tracks on different topics that connect to that. And because we see that, well, you learn by doing, it's also very important for us to connect to monitoring and learning. And Juanita will dive into that topic later, but we kind of do a very iterative process of implementing, sharing, learning, and feeding that back also into the implementation process. What does the Atelier, Innovation Atelier do? What kind of actions does it support? Of course, it's to support the energy transition towards smart cities and communities, and now also more specifically toward climate neutrality in cities, aiming at involving and organizing the local ecosystem, creating really an open innovation space, and making sure that we really connect different expertise, knowledge together to make, well, good solutions, good ideas towards resolving the complex issues. And we do that in a very open network environment with public authorities, business, companies, R&D, and citizens, really bringing the quadruple helix together and looking at what type of products, services, and ideas can offer value for the participants, which could be very different for everybody that is at the table, looking at problem owners, but also the wider environment. Because in that way, we can see also how we create added value for all those involved, and how we can also see how we could sustain such a partnership towards the future. Maybe a bit of the characteristics. I think most of you know the concept of urban living labs, and also there's been a lot of research done on innovation regarding public-private partnerships, and within the concept of Innovation Atelier, we've brought these two bodies of knowledge together. And the characteristics of the Innovation Atelier are that we stimulate open innovation in an ecosystem consisting of the quadruple helix. There's emphasis on co-creation of solutions and supporting measures, and that there's also activities connected to the question how to sustain such a partnership. Also because we know that living labs often exist as part of a project and then dissolve after that. So within this project, we have a real focus on how to sustain this beyond the lifetime of the project. Within the Atelier project, we have defined different stages of development. And I think this nicely shows also the different steps you work through from establishing, maturing to stabilizing. And currently we are in the stabilizing phase. So in the establishing phase, it's important to set your vision and mission, think about the financing strategy, thinking about the initial business model, how you want to organize yourself, and also how you want to set up your cooperation. Is it an entity? What kind of agreements are needed? And once the basis is there, then the maturing starts, and there's more time to look at the brand, how the network can be expanded, how you really start operationalizing the business model, start establishing and implementing the positive energy districts, showcasing the results, and starts to see what kind of values could really reach towards this sustainability part. And once you're in stage 3, the stabilizing phase, then we see that usually different services are operational. In this case, implementations are operational, and there's more view on a dedicated business model. There are rules about how to enter and be part of a network, how to design the sustainability for the future, and also actively thinking about upscaling of results. And I think to the bottom, again, to mention that there's a continuous monitoring and learning and evaluation process going on as we move from different stages. And it's presented here as a linear process, but I would say in practice, it's very iterative, it's very adaptive. Well, I think everybody knows when you start implementation of measures or changes in the built environment, it's always a bumpy road. So a linear process would be perfect, but it actually never happens. And in the end of the project, our aim is to really develop a replicable PED Innovation Atelier concept that can also then be transferred to other cities to take on, and for us from the project to give several examples about. So now that you've heard something about the stages, I'll dive a bit deeper into the concepts, talking about the quadruple helix and how we're involving different stakeholders in the ecosystem, what the organizational structure means, why it's important to have a vision, a mission, and a strategy, how we support the implementation of innovations in different ways through the innovation tracks, but also through developing innovation capacity within the organizations, where we look at the instrumentation, the products and the services, and finally also developing this sustainable partnership, a business plan, and future operation. So first of all, the quadruple helix in open innovation. Behind this is the reasoning that it's important to have all the partners at the table that are concerned with positive energy districts. So it's on the government, it's on the industry, it's on the research and academic side, but also on the side of society. And the topics that often are shared by these organizations and stakeholders is that it's about knowledge, it's about product and service development, it's about responsible innovation, social innovation, and how we also can do that in a joint way, working on different levels together. And often it is not only connected to a positive energy district, but to several levels in the ecosystem. So that's then taken into account as part of the partnership. Then following that, a bit more detail about this ecosystem, because we see that an open innovation model, it's really important to make sure that there's cooperation with different stakeholders. There are different interests, but there are also different roles and responsibilities. And important to say that this can even differ per country because the contexts can be very different. First of all, public authorities at the table, because we see that cities connect this to their long-term visions on climate change, on sustainable production and consumption, but also connecting it to urban planning, as we know that space is one of the most scarce resources we have in cities. And then there's an important role for private companies and industries. Think about real estate developers, the construction companies, network and grid operators on the energy side, the utility companies, and many others. They play a vital role to really provide solutions, but also to connect it to the societal goals that are set. And of course, the citizens are important. They will take on a new role as prosumers. They'll have active participation in energy saving and sharing. And I think what was mentioned in the movie on the PEDs, energy communities are becoming a more and more important part of this whole ecosystem. And then the involvement is key, involving the citizen in their needs, but also sharing what it means, being part of the ecosystem and thinking about the energy transition. And finally, knowledge institutes and academia. It's about feeding in state-of-the-art knowledge into the process, but also developing new types of tools and instruments to see how we could feed into the questions and the needs that both authorities, companies, and citizens have, but also securing capacity building. Often there are few people from organizations involved in such projects, but you want to have a broader spread. So the capacity building and education of, professionals and as well citizens is an important part of the project as well. If you look at organizational capacity, it's really about, well, how does the partnership look like? Who chairs this partnership? Who decides on the agenda? How to set it up? And this is actually quite different for the two lighthouse cities in Atelier. So in Amsterdam, the partnership was newly set up. It was a network of local partners that in the context of the Amsterdam PED demonstrator came together, some very much connected to the location, some connected more to the whole city scale or even regional scale. As where in Bilbao, the partnership was already an existing partner network. It was tailored and rebranded, and the Basque Energy Cluster is chairing the regional network of energy partners in the context of Bilbao and also in the context of their demonstrator. And I think you can see they start from different starting points. And for us as a project, it's of course interesting to see what does this mean for the concept, what does it deliver, what insights does it give, and what does it mean if you start from scratch or if you start from an existing network. And I'll say something more about that later. And well, just two more kind of organizational figures within the Amsterdam Innovation Atelier. There's a core team that kind of chairs the partnerships, organizes the agenda, brings people to the table, decides on really crucial topics to discuss together, and also prepares that with other partners in the network. And within the project, we've also developed cross-cutting sessions from the different innovation tracks, connecting to the questions and developing knowledge based on the needs of the Innovation Atelier. And those could be sessions connecting to knowledge questions. It could also be use cases. It could be examples from elsewhere. So that is kind of also a fluid and adaptive agenda based on the challenges faced in this case, Amsterdam Innovation Atelier. And then if we go to the Bilbao Innovation Atelier, here there's also a core team established. The innovation tracks are established with different leaders, as well as in Amsterdam. And also here they've organized different workshops along the different tracks where they've involved the local stakeholder community. So kind of a similar setup, although Bilbao Innovation Atelier started from an existing network, as where Amsterdam started from a totally new network that gathered around the PED demonstrator. And as my colleague Jeroen mentioned in his introduction, we are now also have been moving into the phase that the fellow cities, Bratislava, Budapest, Copenhagen, Krakow, Matosinhos, and Riga have also started setting up their innovation ateliers. And they will actually be working on the first and the second stage within the project. And all of them have established the innovation ateliers and are now in the phase of maturing, organizing different workshops, making connections to opportunities for positive energy districts within new projects, within running projects, or even within the time frame of our project formulating new projects to build on. And in that way are also, well, already replicating the concept of innovation ateliers. A very important part of such an innovation atelier is that at the beginning, there's a good discussion with the partners in the partnership on the vision, the mission, and the strategy. Because we see that it's important to work from shared and common goals, to decide on what actions are needed and what's the mission you're working towards. And often, once having that vision, mission, and strategy, it can also attract new partners to the network and to the partnership. And if you look at an example of such a sustainability mission within the Amsterdam Innovation Atelier, they said, well, we bring together, connect citizens, businesses, local government to make the built environment energy positive. We do that with a multidisciplinary network of users, producers, governments, and knowledge institutes who jointly create, accelerate, and implement innovative solutions. And for them, this was a starting point where they share the ideas together and said, this is kind of a mission we jointly agree on. And once the basis and the foundation was laid, there was time to dive into several also content topics. And within Atelier, we have 4 innovation tracks, one connected to integrated smart energy systems and electromobility, one connected to governance and integrated planning and law, one connected to new financing instruments, and one connected to data privacy and data platforms. And we see that around these topics, both innovation ateliers have held several workshops diving into, for instance, in the latter innovation tech data commons, but also connected to governance, integrated planning and law, how we deal with energy communities, how we deal with energy sharing. And on the first topic, for instance, how you can connect the energy transition also to the mobility transition and connect it to e-charging, electric mobility, maybe balancing the grid. And of course, new financing instruments, both on the level of the partnership in itself, which I will come back to later, but as well connecting to business models on the ground and how to connect this in a good way. And then next to kind of innovative knowledge, technical knowledge, we also have quite some attention for what we call innovation capacity. We see that when you're working on these transitions and aiming for joint collaboration, working towards societal goals, that's important to also strengthen the partner's capacity to innovate. And here to the right, you see a framework that the OECD has developed on innovation capacity. And we see that it's very important that individuals are part of a partnership, but you need to make connections to your organization and also feedback learnings and how you work because you want to take that on in future situations. Because in innovation projects, we see that things are done differently, that mistakes are often occurring, that we're doing a lot of experimenting and learning, and that there's also a lot of knowledge coming up, and you would like to feed that into a broader, family of organizations behind all of that. And that really asks attention for several topics. And based on an innovation capacity framework that TNO has developed, we're talking about leadership, really joining in on the vision and the mission. It's talking about organization, how our organizations also supporting the fact that innovation is happening. Network, how to connect to a whole network of stakeholders, being involved and really living up to the ambition of co-creation. Organizing your knowledge management and really making sure that there's room and space for learning, for monitoring, evaluation, but also feeding back these learnings into the whole process. And in that way, we see that there's more needed than only the technological innovations. There's also this innovation capacity and social innovation needed to really make, positive energy districts to a success. And if you look at, what are these partnerships doing within their innovation ateliers? There are actually a lot of options. So this is kind of an overview of possible open innovation activities connected to services. So for instance, you could think about community building, strategy development, more on the side of the ecosystem, but you could also think about technology services, thinking about technical support, even doing specific research, testing and validation, but also connecting services to business, project development, supporting on the basis of finance. And this is also kind of a scheme that we use as to reflect on what are the activities that the partnership takes up and what is our role in that. So if we look at, for instance, the Amsterdam Innovation Atelier, we see that a lot has started with different expert meetings, but that also targeted consultancy has taken place to overcome barriers, that we see that specialized expertise on the financial, legal, social, and technical side was very much needed to work actually on this innovative topic. And that the knowledge exchange has already kind of made sure that stakeholders understand each other in a better way, but that you also share your joint challenges and barriers that you face, and that it's a way to kind of jointly also solve solutions. So in the way of how the innovation ateliers are set up and the activities are done, there's a lot of room to facilitate dialogue between all these different partners. It's a safe space to also share your doubts and your frustrations. And it's a point of contact also for citizens and citizen collectives and energy communities to come in and jointly discuss. And in this way, we're also creating a knowledge database. We're also sharing that knowledge beyond partners in the project. And in that way, we see that there's a value of such a process. And that's, of course, also what's most important to keep this alive beyond the lifetime of the project. And the way we say, is it valuable? We talk about the value proposition. And in Amsterdam, we see that bringing this partnership together has really catalyzed innovation. It has connected different experts on different levels. Also, the possibility to connect to a broader EU network has been of lots of added value because you get in other ideas and possibilities. And because we are working together, talking also to different maybe regional, national governments, ministries on laws, regulations, we've also been able to really make new steps, additional steps that would never have happened without this type of cooperation. So what the Amsterdam Innovation Atelier in this case offers is that there's a pool of PED experts readily available. There's an adaptable framework for the PED development. There's a concept on integrated funding strategy, and there's knowledge on all these different innovation tracks. And in this way, we see that having the Innovation Atelier, having a kind of a structure where you can connect and ask and put your questions to the table really helps to connect, accelerate, and realize these positive energy districts. And then talking about the future, talking about thinking of a business plan. Well, there are different ways to look at this. And I think what I would like to highlight that, first of all, it's about financial needs in the preparation, in infrastructure, in projects on operational levels. But there are also sources of income. If you have a partnership with a membership fee, participation fees could come in. You could organize funding for specific services. You could also connect to license fees. So there are different ways also to not only have costs, but also think about the income sources. And of course, there could be investments of several sorts, where also the partners within the partnership have a role to take. And I think I want to show this overview because there are a lot of opportunities to organize funding models. And this is just kind of an overview, which could be directed towards income, which could be directed towards saving. But it shows that there are lots of strategies that you could also connect together. And in both of the innovation ateliers, we've had deliberate and really active discussions about what the funding models should be. And this is not an easy discussion, but bringing it to the table also shows where the opportunities are, where there might be any no-goes, but also how it connects to your goals is important to make. So then finishing this off, connecting it to the more sustaining part, as I mentioned in the beginning, it has been the ambition from the start to really activate the local ecosystem, developing this PED Innovation Atelier, bringing it to operational modus, but then also securing it towards the future. So we've had several discussions, as I mentioned, on what's the organizational model, what's the business plan, what's needed to thrive this beyond the lifetime of the project. And as I said, there are several ways to do it, from existing partnership and building on that as a Bilbao. But in Amsterdam, you see that it's more now towards a community of practice, where we are looking to see if that network could become also in a more formal setting. And well, of course, for Bilbao, it's very clear that they would like to continue their activities under this umbrella and network structure of the Basque cluster of Energia. So it's been a quick deep dive into the Innovation Atelier concept. If you're interested and if you want to know more, there's a detailed deliverable 3.1 from the Atelier project that really, well, fleshes out the concept and the elements of the Innovation Atelier concept. The vision and mission, the business plan, the business model, the organizational model, how you can create such an entity, showing different examples about how this could work, as so other cities could also translate this to their context and see what would work best for you. And of course, we have materials connected more to the innovation tracks. We will also be publishing deliverables that have kind of a red thread through all of these sessions, what the learnings are. And in the end of the project, we will also be developing a guideline document for cities and stakeholders to build up such an innovation atelier step by step, showing the practical examples, not only from the lighthouse cities, but also from the fellow cities. And the plan is to publish this in the beginning of next year. And well, here are some of the links to, of course, the Atelier project, but there are also other projects that are building on this knowledge. First of all, Move 21, but there's also the Bowie network that has more the capacity building and learning part if you're talking about the public-private partnerships. And then if I make the connection to Move 21, TNO is also part of this project. And you could say it's in a totally different field of transition, the mobility transition, but it aims for the same goal. It aims for, contributing to zero emission in the 21st century, contributing to climate neutrality. And within the Move 21 project, we are actually implementing the same concept that we are implementing here of the Innovation Atelier, and there we call it the Innovation Co-Creation Partnerships. So if you're interested in seeing how it's done, also connected to, this other context, in this case, more related to the mobility transition, with loads of connections to the energy transition, I would say. Also here, there's a report of how the living labs have been established, how these kind of innovation ateliers have been established, what the first year looked like, what challenges they faced. And this is connected to the cities of Oslo, Gothenburg, and Hamburg. And just recently, we also published a monitoring report that shows some lessons learned and also what challenges we see going from maturing towards stabilizing. So I think it's interesting to share that this living lab connection, the connection to public-private partnerships, we see it emerging across multiple, you could say, perspectives and points of view connected to climate neutrality. And we see that it's a really challenging thing to do and to start, but specifically to sustain. And we're really hoping to, connect the results and examples from these cities back to other cities and to see how we could also make this work, looking at all the transitions and challenges that we are facing. And then I'll stop here. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Gijske, for this short deep dive, as you already have mentioned. I think a lot of information about the functioning of the Innovation Atelier. I think a note for now is that we just learned that the ability for formulating your questions in the chat within Teams is for now still disabled. I think we are working currently on a solution to enable it, so that hopefully by the second part that Juanita will present, you are able to put your questions in the chat there. But as a workaround, you can also send us an email through our website, the general information email, and put your question in there. So we will keep the time for questions and answers all the way in the end of the program today. Then, without further delay, I would like to welcome now Juanita, and wish you a lot of pleasure with the second lecture of today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeroen. Thank you, Gijske. I would like to continue the story of Geeske by introducing the results and the learnings and the framework about monitoring the establishment of the Innovation Atelier in the lighthouse cities. But actually, not only because during the project we have realized that also is super interesting to monitor how the fellow cities are doing and how these lessons can be further disseminated in the other context. So, as Geske mentioned, we are in a world that is needing a lot of is having a lot of challenges, and we need to understand how to tackle those challenges. And specific in Atelier, we are trying to deal with a complex urban challenges that is energy transitions through the PEDs. But these challenges actually require a lot of collaboration. So we need a lot of multiple stakeholders and disciplines. Geeske already mentioned the quadruple helix. And this is super important because in some way it's not a topic that can be solved by one actor. Also, open innovation and co-creation is needed because in some way the way that we can solve this problem is still not clear. So we need to be very iterative and try to see and come up with solutions, figuring out what are the things that cannot be scaled. And then we are prototyping solutions that can be transferable or scalable. And in this case, Atelier is a perfect example of this. And finally, which is one of the points that is more important in this Innovation Atelier, is the fact that sharing is caring in some way. So sharing all the lessons learned and knowledge between cities, but also with external actors, is key in addressing these challenges. So in this case, our Innovation Atelier works as a sort of living labs in which we establish a governance and a set of values and principles to support the realization and implementations of positive energy districts in cities. And moreover, our goals is to actually facilitate that process. At the same time, I would like to explain how we are learning about it, because in some way, this Innovation Atelier is a very innovative concept, even if it's based already in the existing literature of living labs. But it's also very important that we are also figure out how this organization and how this underlying system can be further facilitated. So for doing the monitoring of this Innovation Atelier, we basically developed different steps. So first we developed a monitoring plan, but also we wanted to elaborate a monitoring approach because this organization is very complex. So it was very interesting to understand where the value was created and where are the key aspects of the organization of the Innovation Atelier. Then we developed a monitoring in action, actually, that was able to allow or give us a method to develop these different things. And finally, we have the deliverables. In all of these steps, for the monitoring plan, one of the things that we are doing and for the monitoring in action is using the existing activities and using the different things to do the monitoring. But also the framework was key in allow us to understand what were the key elements of the Innovation Atelier. In this framework, we developed 6 key components that were the base to understand where we needed to put our attention in the Innovation Atelier. So the first one is the sustainability mission that was already mentioned by Geeske. So it's basically what is the mission or what is the sustainable change that your Innovation Atelier wants to contribute and how. The value proposition, what products or services your Innovation Atelier offers and to whom. The strategic coordination is how Innovation Atelier is embedded in and connected in the local decision maker in the local ecosystem. And open innovation activities are these activities, but also services that you are the resulting outputs of what you are doing as an organization. Then learning, knowledge, and dissemination is super important because how we are sharing or how the Innovation Atelier is learning from these activities and from the findings. And finally, that is also very important is the organizational capacity. It's like how it's organized and how it's working. So for doing this, we implemented different ways of working, but mostly the monitoring activities have been performed also in an opportunistic way. Ideally, you would like to organize targeted and specific monitoring activities in all the different cases, but also we have learned that in some way it's better to try to connect with existing events. So that means that we have tried to prioritize at the maximum to organize these monitoring activities during the General Assembly, during the cross-city learning events, and also try to do these activities during the existing monitoring, during the existing atelier activities or meetings. This has helped us first to reduce the overload in other stakeholders that are participating to the project, but also to try to create value and have the key partners already on the table. But also for us, it's very important to share those knowledge. So you can check our deliverables, the ones that 3.6, but also the upcoming deliverables. And finally, disseminating that knowledge, because maybe we can learn a lot, but it's extremely important that we manage to communicate what we have learned with the general public, also because we are not the only ones that are needing answers in terms of how to transition and how to establish or accelerate the implementation of positive energy districts. So I will give some examples of these monitoring activities, but basically this was very important. And since I think 2023, we have focused a lot on trying to organize monitoring activities in such a way that we can not only collect the learnings from the Bilbao and Amsterdam, that are the cities that are learning, but I also try to share those findings, but also those questions with the fellow cities to make sure that this kind of knowledge sharing is quite transparent. And in fact, if you see some of the findings from that session, first, it's clear that this Innovation Atelier as an organization is very relevant in the implementation of positive energy projects. Many cities are struggling with policies because policies do not always follow the speed of innovation. There is some adaptation that needs to be performed, and I will tell more in the findings. And also a very common finding in all the different ateliers and also solutions, that is the citizen engagement. Also, we have learned, but also by doing that, knowledge sharing between the pilots is extremely important, even if I will say now is not that easy. So in the Budapest city event, also, we did a similar exercise. So we connect also lighthouse cities with fellow cities. And for us, it's really important also to help the other cities that are starting into identifying what is important and which stakeholders need to be engaged on the table. So typically, when you start an European project, or you start a project or an innovative project, and you think about your stakeholder engagement strategy and your stakeholders, you want to do a lot of activities, engage all the possible stakeholders. But at the same time, once you need to do a plan and you see realistically the time that you have, you will realize that maybe you need to also try to overcome or come up with a plan that is realistic. And I think this session was very functional to it, to try to also reflect on the fact that maybe one stakeholder could be extremely important for you, but for that stakeholder, your project cannot. So it's very important also to try to come up with ideas or reflections on how to do this better. And still very similar findings from the different cities, but in general is always the citizen question, the engagement question, that how do you engage the stakeholders? And I think that this has been a really relevant question in all the different cities, and also the city department silos, which is a common configuration in different cities. So it's also something that many of the cities have tried to overcome. And following this approach, we also wanted to kind of share or use the key components that we use for the monitoring also with the fellow cities and with the lighthouse cities. So also we have done some of the activities to also reflect together also on the learning. So at the beginning, the lighthouse cities fellow cities were invited to reflect on the current organization and lessons learned on the Innovation Atelier in Bilbao and Amsterdam, but also they were invited to reflect in the same way to understand what were the things that were missing and what were the questions that they need to ask. And for instance, these sessions served also for allow them to reflect on how much the project can contribute with certain value to the local stakeholder community, but also try to understand how to realistically implement your innovation atelier with the resources that you have. And in this, I'm very happy to report also that one of the, I think, the success factors on the monitoring approach and frameworks was also to see the different cities from the lighthouse cities and fellow cities are adopting that approach to assess what they need to do and how they are organized. So this is also very interesting from our terms. But also we did another monitoring in action. So basically, we have been doing many different ways in order to understand what are the difficulties, because sometimes just by being in meetings or attending to different, or reading different reports or attending to different meetings, opportunities can be identified in this context. And here you can see some examples. One second. Here you can see some examples of active monitoring in which different meetings and activities and questions come up. And monitoring has been extremely relevant on this because, for instance, by doing this during meetings, we have identified different opportunities for collaboration between cities, between lighthouse cities and fellow cities in topics that were not that clear since the beginning. And the monitoring looks a little bit like this, following the different aspects. And actually, one of the topics that has come new is also the implementation of the PED, because the PED itself is a very big opportunity for learning too. And as I mentioned, we have these, the deliverables. So if you want to learn more, for instance, of what we learned until here, I invite you to check this deliverable that is on our website. But also I invite you to check next year the deliverable 3.7, in which we will report fully on all the different lessons learned, but also on the findings of the monitoring of the different innovation ateliers. And as I mentioned also, we want to learn, we want to share, but also we want to disseminate. So activities like this one, but also different type of events have been very functional. Also because we have seen that there is a cross-learning opportunities in ways that we can use, for instance, the tools or the monitor frameworks we have developed in Innovation Atelier to support other challenges, other people that is looking to work on transitions and in complex challenges, but also disseminated across different projects, because there are also a lot of projects that are working in similar topics, and there is a huge opportunity for sharing and for learning. We have also used this to develop proper tools. So for monitoring and evaluation, actually, the approach that was used inside of the Innovation Atelier was also helpful to develop our own tools to further support stakeholders or ecosystems in needing to understand how to set up their own innovation or their own innovative projects that are not necessary on energy transition, but could be in other challenges. So, coming back to the monitoring framework, in this section, I wanted a little bit to focus on what are the findings that we had and what are the recommendations following the different key components that we have in Innovation Atelier. So, respect to the mission, we have learned a lot. So, it's very important when you draft a mission that you think about the city visions and the long-term energy transition strategy. You have seen that either with the case of Amsterdam, but also either with the case of some of the fellow cities, for instance, Riga, or for instance, other cities, in which we have seen that for them, connecting with other, with key elements of their city vision, but also with other projects, is extremely important to give continuity and to make a major impact. So your mission should really be also linked to the strategic agendas of the organization, but also to key stakeholders and also to the overall goals that you want to achieve as a city, and to other existing projects. Regarding the value proposition, we have learned a lot on it. And actually, one of the things that we have learned is that it's very important to disseminate project results. And this is a place, actually today, this webinar, but also all the different events, is a place also for other people in the ecosystem to learn, not only for the project people. One of the things that is very important is to promote knowledge sharing and collaboration, sharing best practices and frameworks as we are doing now. Then we are also seeing, for instance, in the case of, especially of Amsterdam, that access to a network of experts is quite important, because some of the actors do not know how to start energy transition, do not know how to work with positive energy districts. So the fact that we have our own capacity in which we have experts on legal aspects or different things has become very important and very key in supporting our local ecosystem. And also in two different ways, business models and funding strategies, but actually, for instance, Bilbao has also worked a lot in finding funding mechanisms for PEDs and for vulnerable population. In the case of Amsterdam, for instance, one of the things that is very interesting is the current exploration on business models. So these things are extremely important in terms of value proposition of this type of innovation ateliers. And here you can see the different activities and how they are evolving in the two different lighthouse cities. The strategic coordination is how the innovation atelier is embedded and connected to the local decision making is fundamental. Why? Because otherwise you kind of end up with a project that is close in itself but does not have visibility on the rest of the local ecosystem or in other pilots. So it's very important that you try to embed your innovation project or your innovation atelier or in the local ecosystem in a very good way. And for this, we have learned a lot about it. So the first thing is kind of the identification of key stakeholders and making sure that at least the quadruple helix or the triple helix is engaged in the core of your team, and also try to see how key actors can be involved. So sometimes maybe you cannot allocate funding or funding mechanisms, but it's very important that you also try to connect with the strategic agendas of these actors. So for instance, often a mistake of projects is that they focus too much on themselves or what they want to achieve as a project, rather than trying to make it more generic, the message, and trying to connect more strategically with the key stakeholders. So that's very important. And also, as I mentioned before, it's very important that if you have the opportunity to allocate funding for the engagement of the different partners, otherwise you cannot expect them to be to participate at the same level. So that's also very important. So here you can see two examples, but actually this was already described by Geiske, but you can see two examples of how the two lighthouse cities are integrating the local ecosystem. And one of the things that is very interesting is also the fact on how Bilbao has integrated this further into the local ecosystem by making by connecting the different actors, not only to Atelier but other projects. Amsterdam has engaged also citizens, but I have to say that citizen engagement is quite challenging. So in the case of Bilbao, it has been an opportunity also to learn, but you also have to be realistic on how much participation you expect from citizens, trying to be as open and as participatory as possible. The open innovation activities are, as Geske already described, these activities are actually supporting the innovation atelier and disseminating knowledge. And here, when you do these activities, it's very important to take some considerations. So, for instance, I already mentioned this, but one of the classical mistakes is that you organize events, but you don't explain very well how your project is linked to other problems. So it's very important that you try to frame your events and your activities in such a way that are relevant for the broader community. So in the case, for instance, of Bilbao, they talk about energy transition. They talk about different topics that are interesting because are in the agenda of the different partners. Also, Bilbao has established a clear communication about the project, and Amsterdam is doing that now, and other fellow cities. and it's about how you can frame the activities that you are performing in such a way that are relevant to a broader public. So in some way, you say, in the context of the Atelier project, we would like to investigate what are the challenges in establishing energy communities, for instance, or other type of things. But it's really important that you develop this communication in such a way that is very clear for people, and your innovation activities are open to the full ecosystem. It's very important to have a core group that is always participating. Some activities have been able to engage citizens, and this has happened in Bilbao, for instance. So some activities about citizen vision and energy transition has been very attractive to some of the citizens that want to learn more. So that has been one of the strategies. And then, for instance, one of the things that is very important is that sometimes you don't need to organize everything by yourself. So one of the things that we have seen, for instance, in Amsterdam, there is a lot of things happening in this city, or in Bilbao. And rather than organizing one targeted specific activity, sometimes you can also link with other activities that are happening. So, for instance, you can find events where you can have these open innovation activities, and where the public that is interesting for your activity will be there. And this will make your life more easy, but also will kind of bring your message outside of the core of your project or your innovation project. And then it's very important also to sharing is caring. So, for instance, if you are learning like in the case of Atelier, we have Bilbao, Amsterdam, and all the 6 fellow cities. Try to find opportunities to do activities together, because, for instance, there are challenges that are common, or maybe there are approaches that are different. So finding those challenges and those opportunities is extremely important in creating results. And actually here you can see one of the examples from both of the cities. And then learning, knowledge, and dissemination. This is connected to all the rest, but it's very important to learn, and especially in these projects with all the questions. We have a lot of questions, many things still don't work, regulation is not ready. It's super important to open for opportunities for learning, knowledge, and dissemination. So one of the things is very simple in the project is use internal reports and core meetings to discuss the outcomes of the activities. But even more, is very important to communicate with external stakeholders. So it's very important to establish clear communication challenges that are targeted to the distinct types of actors. So, for instance, if you have citizens, you need to explore other type of channels. If you have knowledge institutes, you have other channels. If you are targeted to more European partners, you have other channels. So it's very important that you also find a good way to communicate to your external stakeholders, and also to disseminate knowledge. This will actually result in an increased learning in the local ecosystem. And here you can see some of the strategies. Both cities are doing very well. I think that they have connected to the local ecosystem, but also they are also managing to communicate between each other. So I think that from the case of Amsterdam, also it has been very interesting how they are using local events and existing networks such as Amsterdam Smart City to disseminate or collect inputs about the outcomes of the Innovation Atelier activities. And also Bilbao do press releases, but also is connecting with the broader ecosystem, constantly communicating with them. And then about organizational capacity, so how it's organized, already Geske said a lot about it, but it's very important that you consider the following elements. So appoint a clear leadership that engage the core team and key actors in all the discussions. So that's very important. Investigate strategies to integrate citizen perspective in the core team. And I think that I could give a presentation about this or a reflection about this, but it's extremely challenging because You could engage representatives, but that not always work well, also because they may not be aware of all the diversity of the rest of the citizens. And sometimes it's good to understand what are the steps where you need the citizens to be engaged. So for instance, in the energy community topics is extremely important, but you need to see exactly where and how you aim to engage your citizens to try to make it very to try to collect their views, but also try to be realistic about the possibilities. Then it's very important to define internal project roles that are linked to the roles and overall goals of the organization. So for instance, it's good that, for instance, you have people that is doing has a specific role inside of the project that it's kind of mirroring the role that they have in their own organization, because this in some way will guarantee that there is an ongoing interest, and also that the strategic goals of that organization are linked to the function that this person is executing. So that will make the transfer of knowledge more easy. So for instance, to give an example, with these monitoring activities, I'm also linking that to the current Living Labs activities, and we are also using that approach in order to facilitate other the solving of other complex urban challenges. And the last one is also important to promote collaborative work and activities. So we have learned that a lot in the last years, because sometimes you have partners that are responsible of one specific task or one specific work package or one specific thing. But we have been learning that actually in some way sharing is caring. So we could do much more if we all contribute to the same deliverable, or we all contribute to the same discussion, rather than each one just each one be focused on one different outcome. So that really helps the learning experience, but also helps to establish a more solid communication and a more solid learning. Okay, and here you can see two examples. Maybe one thing that I wanted to add to the what already Geske explained is that one of the opportunities also was to learn. Amsterdam actually, at the beginning of the project, learned a lot from the Bilbao organizational capacity, and some of the current organization has been in some way inspired by the Bilbao organization. So in this, we have learned a lot, because we have seen there are some examples that work pretty well in different contexts. Okay, so I will go to the conclusions now. So we have learned a lot from it, but it's also important that when you are doing, we have learned that it's very important to engage the key stakeholders, if possible, the quadruple helix, with understanding that you need to develop the good strategies to engage your citizens, and they have to be in the core team. It's very important that you establish a mission and a vision that is linked to the strategic agendas, to the partners, or to the existing initiatives. So for instance, it's very important that your mission also is fulfilling the ongoing needs of other partners, or their ongoing questions. So if you're working on, for instance, on energy transition regulation, another organization is working in energy transition regulation, maybe your project can fit that, and you will get that actor more involved. It's also important to frame your innovation activities in a broader way, so they can support the needs of the local ecosystem. So really important that you don't focus on the terminology of your project or what you're specifically doing, but you try to frame that in a more open way. And finally, we are learning that even there are cultural barriers, specific legal frameworks, the Innovation Atelier concept is a very effective tool to support implementations of PD and energy transition. Yes, there are regulations that are different. There are different ecosystems and different maturity on those ecosystems. At the same time, there is a lot to learn. And because here we are exploring an underlying method or an underlying organization, the actual implementation could vary a little bit between contexts, but the framework in general works quite well. And this is what we have been learning, not only from the lighthouse cities, but also for the replication in the fellow cities. And also, in any Living Lab way, or in the Innovation Atelier concept, Innovation Atelier is maturing. So some of the Innovation Atelier have already figured out how they are going to keep existing after the project termination, because they already organized that since the beginning. Some other are also understanding now how this will work in terms of financial how they will finance that, who will be part of the core team, who will have that role. But I think that this is very interesting because we see that in general the concept works very well, but sometimes the context has certain specificities. So the value proposition of one's innovation atelier could be slightly different in other contexts, and also the maturity of the context can play a role on it. So this is for me the last ones, and thank you very much, and let me know if you have any questions. And now we are going to the Q&A.
Well, thank you, Juanita. I think you gave a very extensive presentation of the many learnings and results that we have found already within the context of Atelier, especially from the lighthouse cities. I think important also maybe to mention here that there will be in the run of Atelier another reporting coming out with all the essential lessons learned and some of the nice examples I think you have presented just now. So yeah, please keep a look at our website where we ultimately will be publishing also these results. Getting to the part of questioning and answering, we are very much open to your questions. So please, send us also maybe after the webinar. Unfortunately, we were not able to enable the functionality within the teams during presenting. So the channel through the email is open still, and I think we have received a number of questions which we can discuss at this moment. But I think it is also worth mentioning that after this webinar, we will make available all the slides that have been presented to you, and where we also will try to summarize and bring together all the questions that we have received by email, and also a quick answer to those. And this will be able to be found on the website of Atelier, as well as on the PED learning platform, where we also have a teaser to show in a minute. But coming to some of the questions, we have received the question asking for recommendations for other cities that are not involved in the Atelier project, but that might be willing to establish an innovation atelier themselves. And the question is where to start. Maybe to ask Gijske first with some idea or reflection on that.
Yes, certainly. Well, I think going back to the example from the lighthouse cities, looking at the Bilbao lighthouse, of course, they kind of jumped from an existing partnership, an existing cooperation, an existing network. And I think there's an example as well in the Move 21 project that I was describing, that then you kind of have we would say a flying start, right? The stakeholders are often together. Sometimes you need to reconvene. Do we have all the quadruple helix partners, to the table? But of course, that would be the ideal start. If you're talking about starting from scratch, like Amsterdam did, but also quite some fellow cities did, there we really started with, if you have the ambition, for instance, as a government, or maybe as a business, or maybe as a collective, or whatever, it's really good to do some ecosystem mapping. We actually did that in one of the exercises that Juanita was also showing. What would be the type of partners you would like to have and which you would need at the table? And then, how to start that. Most of the fellow cities did the mapping and then started the first workshop together with all these partners to kind of convene. Do we have a joint goal? Do we see the need to cooperate on this topic of the energy transition, developing positive energy districts? Maybe starting a little bit to develop this vision and mission together to see if there's added value to jointly work on that. And then you can dive deeper into kind of the more formalities of the organizational model, of the business model, etc. And connecting to a question that was also raised on, should an innovation atelier have its own statute? Should it be kind of a formal organization? I would say there are different ways. I think the collaboration in Bilbao is a more formal organizational way, as where if you're talking about a community of practice, it could be more organized based on agreements. Then it doesn't really need to have a formal organizational statute or model. So I think it does depend on how you organize it. If you really want to sustain it towards the future, the more you formalize it, well, it has a kind of a status. It could also prevent new partners from joining. So it's all, I think, about the agreement connected to this. But Juanita, maybe you want to add.
Yeah, I wanted to add that I mean you can go with a formal statute, but it's all sometimes, as Geske say, sometimes it's more difficult to act and to be fluid, because you will see with the pass of time that some actors will be more interested in joining, and some others will starting to fade in some of the ways. So in this, you have to be also aware that sometimes having a very rigid organization instead of helping could actually create certain difficulties. And the other thing is also start from the pain is really important. That so maybe we are working in our case in positive energy districts, but actually our context is energy transition. So it's very important that we try to frame things in a more general way, because what we are learning from positive energy district is perfectly relevant to the overall and ongoing energy transition conversations and different projects. So that's also very important to do. So it's very important that you try to understand what is the big challenge that you are solving, and then where are you going to focus, and also that you see a little bit on the strategic agendas of the organization. So you really need to kind of embed what you are going to do to what they are actually doing and what they are actually looking for. So that will be a way that you know that they are not only going to do the work, but they are also going to actively be engaged and contribute and use these findings in another way. So I think that this is kind of super important. And as Geske said, be realistic about the number of stakeholders that are engaged, what is in for them, how many you want to have. So basically it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Ruben, I think you made the suggestion also to widen a little bit the scope, and I think it's a nice bridge to a question that was received, giving that the innovation ateliers, how could they also help cities in their climate ambitions? So yeah, becoming climate neutral in the future. So that's this widening the scope there a little bit, and how could the innovation ateliers also support these ambitions?
Well, I think that the Innovation Atelier, if you remove the energy part of the positive energy part, I think that this is an organization that helps to accelerate. So it's a sort of governance or a sort of urban living lab with a pilot, in which you establish a group of stakeholders, you establish a set of activities, you establish a set of goals that you want to achieve together. So in some way, I see very easy to take the example of Innovation Atelier and adapt it to other urban challenges and make sure that you do this. You will always do your stakeholder engagement. You will always have goals to achieve together. You will always have a test, an iterative process that you want to follow. So basically I think that this is kind of not very difficult to adapt, and maybe Jeroen, Geske, we should actually reflect on how we can make even more generic the concept of Innovation Atelier, so it's clear for people how it is super easy to take the same approach and implement it in a completely different challenge.
Yeah, nice. And Gijske, you have any elaboration on that?
Well, I think a very lively interaction we're having in the consortium is, for instance, around the city's mission, working towards climate neutrality in 2030. 6 out of the 8 cities are part of the selected cities becoming climate neutral as part of the 112. And I think some of the cities have expressed that the fact that they were part of Atelier, the fact that they were setting up the Innovation Atelier, that they had a community of stakeholders connected to them, that there was something established, really gave them a kind of a kickstart on also setting up activities around the so-called climate city contracts, where it's not one party in the lead, but it's like a joint effort from the city perspective to work towards climate neutrality. And I think this is also kind of the key and foundation from Innovation Ateliers, that it's kind of a joint effort, that you're looking for common goals. And then I agree with Juanita, setting a common goal like climate neutrality is very fit to the approach that we're presenting here. And it connects to the composition of, the city's mission towards climate neutrality, that talks about a transition team within a governmental organization, but a whole transition arena of partners that cooperates on developing this mission and vision and plan towards climate neutrality. So I would say the concept of Innovation Ateliers connects very nicely to this concept of a transition arena, where you bring partners together, where you think about the actions you can take jointly in different compositions of partners. And we're in it together. The urban transformation doesn't come from one specific stakeholder alone. It's really a joint effort. So I think it really nicely fits with kind of the broader context we are in and drives we see becoming climate neutral.
Okay, thank you, guys. One other topic that came up had to do with the stage of sustaining the activities of Innovation Ateliers, also after the duration of the subsidy projects. Could you have some ideas on opportunities or threats that are linked with sustaining these future operations? Maybe you can start with Juanita.
Yeah, I think that this is an overall question. So in the case opportunities, I think that the way that Bilbao did it since the beginning, creating a greater ecosystem with a more general question, allowed them to immediately identify this. Also to have Cluster Energía was very useful in terms of having the setup that was already organizing that. At the same time, for instance, in Amsterdam, is challenging also because there are different organizations that are already active talking about these topics. So it's very important also to try to find where the needs and the sweet spot is, because in some ways it feels that, for instance, Amsterdam Innovation Atelier has a lot of relevancy in going deep into the different arguments. At the same time, you need financial mechanisms to make it work. And this is something that needs to be figured out, because you don't want the business model of the Innovation Atelier to be contradictory with respect to its goals. So I think that this is one of the challenges that I see. So it's finding where the gap is, where your Innovation Atelier is extremely relevant in the ecosystem, and also how you are going to have funding for it in a way that is not contradictory respect to the overall goals of the energy transition or your innovation itself.
Okay, thank you, Juanita, for the quick answer. We are on a tight schedule, so I think we have to stop the Q&A with this last remark, and then I will hand over to Steinbeis for the wrap up of this webinar today. But not without thanking Juanita and Gijske again for their wonderful presentation today. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you also from my side. I'm Regine. I'm working for Steinbeis Europazentrum, and we are the communications partners in the Atelier project. So I was just backstage facilitating this webinar. You see on the screen 3 QR codes that you can scan in order to stay tuned and not miss the next editions of this webinar series. This was the first one. There are many more to come. We're very excited about them. So make sure to stay in contact with us. I will also email you a couple of links, the presentation that you saw today, and at a later stage, also the recording of this webinar. And to finish, I would like to show you a little trailer to the PET learning platform that was also mentioned at the beginning, so that you can see what to expect. We would be glad if you signed up. There is a lot to learn on this platform. Thank you.
So how could you in your city with your stakeholders start with implementing PEDs in your city to find out whether it works for you?